my first night in the hospital. My last visitor was the Cook County State's Attorney. He walked up to the side of my bed and took a look at me, shook his head, and said, "This will be attempted murder." You know, before this incident, I would say that many times people would turn me off as a pastor because I didn't have scars. I didn't have life experience. I had a life as a good Christian kid and a person who had done the right things. See, earlier that day I'd been approached by a person we had been reaching out to in our homeless ministry. And they had asked me if I could take them on an errand. I took them on the errand, and on the way back they said, "Hey, would you mind dropping me off over by the quarry?" And I said, "I'd be happy to." And they said, "Would you pray for me?" And as a pastor, you get that request all the time. I said, "Sure." Put a hand on their shoulder as we sat in my car and closed my eyes and began to pray. And my prayer was suddenly interrupted by this flow of blood that was coming from my neck all over. And I hadn't realized it, but they had taken out a knife during my prayer and slashed me here and then alongside. The blade actually went through between two vertebrae that run through my neck and nicked an artery there. I found myself in a life and death battle. We fought in the car. We ended up rolling out into the street. We fought in the street, tied him up in a wrestling move, but his arms were free, so he picked up a rock and worked me over the head pretty good. Suddenly, a truck driver stopped, looked in his rearview mirror. He didn't get out of the car, but it was enough to unnerve my attacker, who ran off into the woods. I'd lost my glasses, my shirt, my undershirt, my shoe. I thought, well, if help isn't coming to me, I've got to go get help. So I just rode to the first public place I could find and laid on the horn until someone called an ambulance. I remember later in my hospital stay, I was 8 hours in the emergency room, got all stitched up and all these different tests. And I experienced a real question before God of, Lord, how do you survive something like this? I mean, God, how do I get back up and stand before your people and say, He is good, and His love endures today? How do I minister to the next homeless person and not wonder if what they have in their pocket, is it a knife? Is it a gun? How do I stand up and preach your word with the confidence that you work all things together for good for those that love God and are called according to His purpose? And the Lord spoke to me very clearly in my heart. He says, Tom, here's the deal. You may never know why you experienced this one act of injustice. But if you will forgive, if you will love, and if you will trust me with the pain, with the violation, and with the discouragement, I have thousands of acts of mercy to pour out upon your life. And I remember reflecting, Lord, it sounds great to me. But what about my heart? What about the brokenness? And I said I felt like Humpty Dumpty, and could God really put me back together again after this? And I could just sense God's presence touching me, healing me. People ask, well, have you ever struggled with, nightmares, night terrors, PTSD, or any of that? And I have total compassion for those people that are walking through those experiences. But for me, it was just that touch of Christ that day on the hospital bed that changed everything. I think before this incident happened that I was definitely a Christian. I was a pastor leading a church. I thought on the outside that I was really expressing and having God's heart. But I found that we can take words and have them be really superficial in our lives. And we can do superficial ministry. We can do superficial fathering. We can do superficial spousing. And God just brought me to a conviction here that through this incident that your life is superficial and that's not good. I'm not looking for a superficial love. I'm looking for a deep, life-changing, transforming love. And I think my wife would testify today. I think my kids would testify. I think my congregation would testify that they got a new pastor through this whole incident, that they almost lost him, but the one that they got back was much better than the one they had before. One that could listen, one that could carry their burdens in his heart, one that would stand with them, and one that could sense and feel and relate to both the pain in this world, but also the hope that the gospel offers us. But after this, I found that I had a new ear, people willing to listen in and ask the question, can God do for my heart what he did for his heart? Can God give me that healing, that hope, that joy, that restoration? And the answer is, he can.